I'll start off by covering a little bit of Hex, a little bit of Pulsechain, and then I'll move into some areas I find interesting. I'll chuck some timestamps on. So yeah, if you're not into whatever I'm talking about, just skip. Basically, this tweet stuck out to me. Someone saying they're worried about future prices, fraud-fi, platforms crashing, people running away with the money. Hex founder Richard Hart explains flawless uptime, 1,000 days. You know, like how much more details do you need? But people either doubt it, they FUD it, they don't know about it, or for some reason they're against it. Maybe they missed out. Don't know what it is, but it's a very funny space, crypto. I guess this was a good tweet as well. If for someone starting in Hex, what would be a good strategy? I mean, you've got longer pays better, larger pays better. Combine those two, your largest your largest stake, chuck it out as far as you can, all you can. That might not be optimal though, you know? It's about how comfortable you are and when do you need your money. Once you take those things into consideration, like I put in this tweet, maybe look into hex.vision if you're new to Hex. Find days with really low volume, and you can clearly see on a graph, you know, a day where there's like 500 million Hex coming out versus a day where there's like 1 million Hex coming out. The sell pressure, potential sell pressure on the larger days is going to be greater than the sell pressure on the days with less. But you need to also remember that the day before, maybe there was a huge candle the day before the day that you're looking at with low volume. So that could affect the low volume day. There's many things you need to think about before setting up your staking ladder. I like to think if you set up one for yearly, if you could survive like that, and whether or not you're scraping the interest, selling the whole stack, reinvesting the whole stack, that'll be your choice. Have a look at it though. You'd set up maybe 1 year for 15 years, and then as they start to roll over, I mean, it's already been over 2 years now. You can start adding to the second, you could start adding another stake in a year. So it could be bi-yearly, and it would start stacking on top. And then as it progressively grows and the T-share rate increases as well, potentially the price might increase. You know, you've got the highs and lows though, it might average out. Dollar costing in, dollar costing out, things like that. It's basically an infinite money printer, with time being the key ingredient, because you're not, unless you've got a shit ton of money, just chuck it in for 1 day, get like what, 10% or something, take it out. But for someone who's a little bit smaller, it's like literally a perpetual money generating machine. And it just depends on when your stake ends, how much it's actually valued at the time. I think Hex is a little bit undervalued at the moment, and it could just be because of the upcoming Pulsechain fork. People maybe want to play certain ways with that. That could be suppressing the price slightly. I guess uncertainty could be a factor there. But that's probably a good starting point. There's a lot of other, I guess, techniques out there you could look at, but that's just one I thought. Not sure if I've shared that with anyone. But yeah, so that's Pulsechain covered, Hex covered. Oh, another thing. I don't know if anyone noticed this on the testnet. It was a while back, and when the test bridge was opened, you could basically take Pulse from Pulsechain, send it over to Rinkeby, and you were actually getting eHex. Now, that's changed because what I noticed, you send like one Pulse over, you were actually getting now P-Pulse on Rinkeby testnet. So not sure what changed, but yeah, I noticed that. I'm not sure if anyone else did. So previously, like I was saying, it looked as if Pulse was acting in a similar manner to XDAI on the XDAI chain, whereby one Pulse was equaling the one ETH on that, I'm not sure what you would call it, parallel network. But yeah, that's probably all the crypto stuff I'm covering with this video. The rest is gonna be the following. There's never a lack of news. I mean, we've just covered Stonehenge. We've just covered the Guidestones, and now this has happened. Tragedy. XPM has been gunned down. That's crazy shit. Like, how is this going to affect the geopolitical space? Because it just seems like ever since the virus took hold, everything as we know it has appeared to have changed. Following the virus, we have the Russian-Ukraine invasion and the ongoing nature of that, putting its presence felt onto the economy. And then we see politicians, if you smash escape on paywalls, sometimes it works. This one might have had a paywall. I can't remember. I might have smashed the escape button and it might have worked. But yeah, this is really funny. Basically, politicians forcing other politicians to quit. I mean, I don't understand this, how you can have politicians resigning. I thought that was their job to, unless they are they've done something wrong and they need to be removed. But it just seems weird to me. Maybe I'm missing something, but politics is a funny game. I think we need to get more people who are friendly to crypto in there. I'm not sure what is up with that. We have polar opposites, ex-prime ministers being assassinated and current serving prime ministers being forced to resign. It's very democracy is very strange at the moment, I feel. We have Twitter basically unable to verify figures. So when you look at a poll, maybe some bots are embedded in Twitter trying to appear as if they're human beings, but they're not, and they're affecting polls, for instance. They could be affecting anything. They could be affecting your feelings of if people are following you, or what the talking points of the day are, or how we should all act. Imagine setting up a lot of bots and influencing decisions like that, or making it appear one way when it's not. So what I'm trying to say, did you see that? I'm not sure if you saw the video. Is in the social experiment. They made everyone stand the opposite way in an elevator, and the one person who wasn't in on it eventually turned and faced the wrong way because everyone else was doing it. Imagine if you had enough Twitter bots to try and put forward certain aspects and views. I'm not sure if this has been happening. Maybe Elon Musk was trying to figure out if this is happening and he doesn't want that to happen. And Twitter's actually not able to provide him those basic details, you would think, But yeah, so it will be interesting to see whether or not Elon's actually able to go forward with this because of Twitter's inability to provide straightforward data. We have also in the world chaos, like Netherlands. There's a lot of protesters going on. Basically, the emissions need to be reduced by 50% by 2030. I've heard people are saying it's basically going to make a lot of people's businesses unprofitable, and therefore they're going to quit those endeavors and aren't going to be able to continue, and they'll have no money. And that's pretty understandable. The weird thing about this is you do see some sensationalization, if that's the word, or some, it looks really bad, but it might not be as bad. I remember here in Australia, we were being told certain things were happening when it wasn't actually the entire of the country. It was different states. But so through that experience, I then thought, well, you see here, shelves are empty, that could be one area more affected by relevant events, because there was other conflicting data suggesting that some areas there was plenty of food and there was no issues. So again, how deep this is, it's not as clear as we sometimes think it is. I find this area interesting, being geopolitical factors that will affect economies, and the economy, the Western US predominant economy at the moment, things that can affect that generally flow on to like Australia, for example. It would generally flow on to like the EU, which in turn follows on to Russia, and then also China supplying goods to the world. It flows on the opposite way, if that makes sense, if you can visualize that in a flowchart. Now, obviously, with trade, GDP, economic balances, surpluses, and things like that, it does. We are basically one large economy. Now, when we see, though, world wars like potentially taking place within our own little Earth, does it really make sense? I don't think it does, but obviously, what do I know? We do see, though, taking into account all of that, these alphabet agencies basically explaining to the world in black and white, saying, you know, there is a threat. It's not like a conspiracy theory that China is trying to steal technology and state secrets. Now, I guess covering this is basically just saying you need to understand who your enemy is to be able to engage in a war. You need to understand that you're under attack. If you don't understand you're under attack, how can you defend yourself? Like, if you don't know this is going on, maybe you read an article, or the way you conduct your business, or the way your ideological beliefs, maybe they're affected because you think it's all a conspiracy theory or something, or it's been sensationalized, that, you know, this is actually happening. This is a real threat. Now, you can then take it a step further and go, well, what could happen if this is the case? Like, beyond obviously the tech stealing, which could be then like weaponized, and also the state secrets, which could be then used to influence others knowing things they shouldn't know. So we have that going on as a real, that's a real threat. We have this too. We have basically warning Western leaders that, you know, attacks on Russia is a threat to an existence. Basically using the nuke stick, saying, you know, we hold this, you know, like, do you really want to continue this march towards a potential Armageddon? Now, I don't think we as a species want to exterminate ourselves, but at the same time, I don't believe what Russia's done is right. And at the same time, I don't believe NATO's encroachment on, you know, on towards Russia is correct either. But taking all that, putting all that aside and looking at the actual, I guess, the current situation, I do believe there is a threat of actual World War III. I hope not. I hope I'm completely wrong and they're just, you know, saber rattling. But to see Russia actually go into Ukraine when they were warned, Ukraine was warned by the US saying there's build up, this is our intel, listen to it. They got ignored. Then it did happen. That's very different. That's two very different situations. You have the threat of potential invasion and actual invasion. We're currently in the state of actual invasion. So we are in the state of credible threats from China on state secrets, on stealing tech. We have Russia probably doing the same thing and actually invading a satellite nation, which is not a part of NATO yet. We have the US providing millions and millions of dollars of lethal aid and other countries lethal aid to Ukraine to, for lack of a better term, stoke the fires of war. And you really take a step back and look at it from a neutral point of view and say, what do you think logically is going to happen here if there's no peace talks? Do you think that one side is just going to surrender? Or do you think that basically it's gone from being proxy US versus proxy Russia's proxies to actual it's just in the open now that basically US is conducting warfare against Russia through Ukraine? It's a very bad situation for the survival of this species. We have here Putin openly saying basically Russia has barely started its action. Now, there was a footage of, I think it was a couple of rocket launchers, like vehicle operated ones, like heavy-ish rocket launchers, and basically Russia saw where they were coming in and picked them off. Like, what a waste of taxpayers' money. We had some vehicles sent from Australia over to Russia and they're being blown up. It's like, what is the point of that? What if Australia needs it next and we've sent it elsewhere and it's been destroyed? What is the logical decision behind that? We spend all this money and all these tax dollars on supporting the military-industrial complex for it to be blown up. Now, that's a whole another fork in the road, because then you talk military-industrial complex, but then at the same time, I wouldn't like to see a weak Western nation, you know, like, I hate to say it, you look at the weaponry like, oh, that's some nice shit. I do appreciate that security, but then at the same time, it's like, does it justify, I don't know, like, endless wars and funding these wars through siphoning the people's economic energy? I don't think that is correct. I mean, in a utopia, maybe all countries could get along and figure out basically we're not going to be able to survive as long if we blow each other off the face of the map through mutually assured destruction. Feeding back to basically TikTok concerns over user data being gathered by Beijing. It's not, these are not like conspiracy theories. These are like, well, I don't actually know. I haven't seen it firsthand. But what I'm saying is there's enough information to validate that this is going on. The conclusion I come to may not be 100% accurate, but at the end of the day, if you look at supporting articles, what is actually being presented, I see no need generally for these types of articles to lie. It could be spun in a certain way, which may not be correct, as I alluded to before, but why would you say that there's evidence to support that Beijing is feeding data back to Beijing from Western nations through the TikTok app? Like, it makes no sense for that to be false. Again, that's not to say there could be lies, misinformation out there, but you see the trend forming. You see the way in which we see China's actions taking place and gaining speed and almost like a snowball effect. And we then start to see other bits of snow that it's picking up in the downward hill of the giant snowball, which is headed towards something. And to what it is it headed towards, we're not exactly sure when you think about it, because we see the conflict in Ukraine and Russia, and then it's like, well, what could happen next? Could it be Taiwan? Could it be the South China Sea? Could it be other island nations? Who knows, you know? The future's not always as clear as it should be, or as it appears. Has it ever been? You know? We've got here a huge data leak of 1 billion records exposes China's vast surveillance state. Now, imagine, this is my thing about cryptocurrency and a central bank digital currency. Imagine if you have transitioned to a state like China where everything's tracked and monitored, right? You have everyone's details on a Sesame credit score. Then imagine you're compromised and these data, the data leaks out. So you don't know who it got compromised to, and you don't know how they're going to then use that. So imagine if you have mass intelligence gathering on all the people of a particular country, that then gets leaked. You've just compromised all of those people and everything about those people because you were collecting it to start off with, if that makes sense. It's insanity. If that was then applied to you or I, and all of our finances known, and all where we shop is known, and who we shop with, where we keep our money, how much money we have. Imagine here a central bank digital currency. How violated would you feel? It used to be illegal, well, it still is, to open someone else's mail. You have the right of privacy. Now you have all your shit in the open. I'm pretty sure if I was in China, I wouldn't have agreed to have my records exposed. Then you see, building off the back of this, a similar thing, private information of more than 100 Australians exposed amid huge China police data leak. So they're gathering all this information, it then gets leaked out, and it's out in the open. Does that make you feel safer? Like, imagine if you had these the virus tracker apps, and it showed Google Maps, for example, wherever you go with your phone. That gets compromised, someone gets in, to it, like, you know, you could imagine what am I trying to say? The weak points, if they were exposed, and then your data is leaked out, wouldn't it have made sense not to hold all that data to start off with? I mean, that's just me. I mean, ideally you'd say, well, keep it more secure, but once it's online, once it's in these systems, it's gone. It's yeah. I think there's going to be a good industry for cybersecurity, is what I'm saying. Now, again, this is the same article basically. Nearly 1 billion people in China had their personal data leaked. It's been online for more than a year. I mean, I remember a while back, there was a list of the members of the Communist Chinese Party. I believe it was in the Chinese symbols, and you had to actually translate that to English. But that list is just online. Like, it was just out there. And so if anyone wanted to look at it, it was there. I mean, that's insane. That's a huge breach. I would not want my details to be like that, just out on the line. It's bad enough if you get your credit card hacked or something. Someone goes on a spending spree. Imagine if someone tries to get into your psyche and, you know, profile you, you know, that would make me feel spooky and uncomfortable. And I hope that the central bank digital currency is not a push towards this, even if they have the right things at mind in their best intentions. It could then be used later on. Like, you know, imagine if something gets hacked, like your system that the central bank digital currency runs on, and there's no other digital dollar, there's no cash, it just goes down in some horrible online attack. What are you going to be left with? That's like worse than a rug pull. It's like a financial legacy system that failure. It's a financial Armageddon. It's like nuking your state, emergency unstaking. That's crazy. But yeah, this is the sort of stuff that I like to think about. I'm not sure why, but every now and then you sort of pull from sort of the where the wind's blowing, and you can kind of feel this is a scary direction we're headed towards as we move forward in the future. This ultimate control, track, trace, herding of us all is quite it's quite alien, to be honest. I'm not sure who has the power and the right to have so much power over all of us. I mean, what is it? One clerk? A couple thousand clerks? Who gives them the power? Who empowers them? And is it the person that rules over them? Like, where is the top of this pyramid? Do we even know? Moving on, we see again alphabet agencies calling China the biggest threat to the US. Also warning of North Korean cyber attack. Like this is when I talk about, if I can imagine a scenario where systems, have you ever noticed online or been browsing online and you'll see an article that says this system was down all day, this system was down all day, this system was down all day. At what point do we start to think that it's not just some IT guy who put the wrong code in, or something wasn't coded right and it caused the whole system to crash or freeze? At what point do we start to question and see the trends and go, hang on, is this really just a silly mistake, or could this be credible threats? Which is concerning, because in some war doctrines, it's like cybersecurity attacks can be attributed as acts of war, which can then turn kinetic. And then the same thing that we all know is that cyber attacks can be very difficult to trace back to who is actually conducting it. Like, it's very scary. Again, we see the trend. China is trying to ransack Western companies. The head of the FBI is like warning us all, like saying this is going to cost us money. It's like it's like a hybrid warfare. It's not them launching hypersonics, it's them crippling systems, which then have flow-on effects, which then also can be tracked and traced, which then affects something else, which then affects something else, which then affects something else. It's like instead of putting one big giant cog to stuff up the machine, it's like, let's just loosen this a bit here, and then put a little bit of dust here. You know what I'm saying? Like, the area is so grey. It's really frustrating, the trickery that is taking place, because we can see now with the supply lines being affected, with the Russia-Ukraine war, with the allies increasing support in the area. It makes you wonder why China does this. Is it these acts of war? Are these, like, why? Is it basically already almost wartime? It's very, very disturbing. So while this is happening, I keep crapping on saying how disturbing this is, and look at all the IT attacks, and we're being warned, like, seriously, something could happen, like something big could be coming if we look at this, if we don't know what's going on, if we're not up to date with everything, if we're not vigilant, basically. Gives me the heebie-jeebies. We have this. Now, I'm pretty sure if you go to every other reserve bank of your country of choice, you will see this, a central bank digital currency. Now we'll see, I'll skim over that. I did download a new software. I'll see if it works. The way I want it to work.
Would be a new digital form of money issued by the reserve version of banknotes that is essentially universally accessible, or for wholesale use, where it is accessible only to a more limited range of wholesale market participants for use in wholesale payment and settlement systems.
Kind of worked. Now, basically, the reserve bank of your choice, be it the Federal Reserve, Reserve Bank of Australia, countries all around the world, China, I'm pretty sure is doing it already. And they're looking at this central bank digital currency. Now, it's being put forward as a happy lala, completely utopian form of a digital currency, simply to help businesses, retail investments, and help with the settlements of big business deals and the like. We then see banks rolling out their own versions of stablecoins, which is different to a central bank digital currency. We then see obviously the cryptocurrency space at the moment being absolutely crushed and things failing left, right, and center, except for HEX. And we then see the demonization of HEX, which is very strange, and the censorship and the gatekeeping, which I think is going to be stopped soon, which will then release the floodgates, and Noah's Ark will be brought about. The flood of death on the cryptocurrency market right now, and all the HEX skins and Pulsechain skins, I can't even say that, and everyone in the Richard Heart ecosphere is just chilling on the Ark right now. We're waiting to find land. We're not out of the flood's not over just yet, but it could be the HEX skins, because how much lower can HEX go, and what happens when Pulsechain gets announced, and what happens when it gets released. And you can imagine what happens when HEX coexists in its new nation state. It's like a utopia that everyone else is just crippled, and we're thriving, absolutely thriving. Anyway, the central bank digital currencies can be used. I believe they will be used for more control over the population by governments. It will be issued similar to, I guess, a food stamp, or similar to a payment from your, we have a thing here called Centrelink. You get payment from that. Sometimes it's in the form of a card, and you can only spend that on food, not on alcohol and smokes and gambling. It will be similar like that, or it will be similar like a payment into your bank account. But chances are there could be provisos built into it, coded into it, hard coded. Maybe not hard coded, because I reckon it could change. But they could change things. They could say you can only spend it on this, you can't spend it on this. So it's money, but it's money that can only be used for things we say. And that could also limit where you could spend it. So maybe you can't go to a local small business and spend your money there, because it doesn't align with, or maybe they don't meet the requirements for it to be spent there. What would that do to an economy? That would be total control. And then you have all your data being collected, and Google AI bots. Not Google AI bots. There was a Google article that basically said they reckon they can predetermine crime using AI. At what point does it get completely insane? We're already seeing politicians being assassinated. We're seeing farmers being put out of work. We're seeing the push for a central bank digital currency. I was going to call it central bank digital control. We're seeing governments unable to function, just quitting to get the prime minister to quit. We're then seeing debts spiraling out of control. How is the world debt ever going to how is that ever going to be paid back? If you had a credit card with infinite credit, and you had to pay the minimum back, not even the minimum back, how are you ever going to pay this credit back? Seriously. Why would you bother? You've got infinite money. Then you have the great equalizer, something that can infinitely print you money that you're responsible for, that you hold, that you interact with, that's trustless, and that gets censored so hard and gets demonized, and years later starts to be sort of covered, just sort of covered. And in a time where we've seen a virus put us all into a state of panic, control us like never before, mandates up the wazoo, we got supply line issues, We got the war. We got the currencies being devalued. We got recession coming if we're not already in a recession. We got cybersecurity espionage out the wazoo from multiple hostile nations. Oh, and then there was this one. We're seeing communication services for thousands just going down randomly. You know, I'm sure that's just a guy forgot to hit the run button on a fucking function, or like got the coding a bit around the wrong way. Like, do you understand what I'm saying here? What if this happened on a large scale? Man, I hope it doesn't. But it would not surprise me if in a time of war, weapons like these were used against other nations. I pray to God that doesn't happen. Can you imagine what will happen if power goes down for days on end because of a cyber attack? Or like, I don't even want to say these things. Just think of everything that's now controlled online that could go wrong. Payment services, communications, electricity, traffic lights. Like, what? This reliance on communication, this reliance on technology is either going to take us closer to utopia, which I hope it does, or it's going to be used against us as a weapon to crush us all. Signing out.